The void was silent when the sky burned. From the heavens above, nocturne, a blazing capsule streaked through the night, trailing fire and thunder. The world below was a land of extremes, a planet racked by earthquakes and titanic predators. The people who lived there were hardy and scarred, dwelling in settlements of stone and iron near the molten rivers of lava. They were blacksmiths, hunters, and survivors, carving out fragile lives against a world that sought to destroy them. When the fireball fell, the people whispered of omens. Some said a god had fallen. Others believed it was a curse. But from the crater, a child emerged. He was enormous, even as an infant, his skin dark as obsidian, his eyes burning like coals. He tended crater, as if born from the planet's heart itself. The tribe that found him gave him a name, Vulcan. Vulcan grew with impossible speed. By the age of 3, he was stronger than any grown tiered by his hammer. When the volcanoes erupted and earthquakes shattered homes, Vulcan, the fire, had gifted them not a curse, but a guardian. Ed, the trial of the fire drake, a beast so immense its scales were mountains and its breath rivers of fire. For 7 days, Vulcan pursued it across ash plains and rivers of lava. His weapons shattered, his armor burned, yet still he fought. On the 8th day, with nothing but his bare hands and his indomitable will, Vulcan slew the fire drake. He dragged its colossal carcass back to his people, forging from its bones the greatest weapons and from its hide a cloak that marked him as protector of Nocturne. The people bowed before him, not as a king, but as their lord of fire. One day, a stranger came to Nocturne. He was tall, armored in gold, and his presence was like a sun that could not be gazed upon. The stranger challenged Vulcan to a contest. Each would hunt the greatest beasts of the land, forge the finest weapons, and bring them before the people for judgment. 4 days they hunted. For nights they worked their forges. When at last they returned, both bore masterpieces. But when the beasts came to attack the people, the stranger and Vulcan fought side by side, their weapons singing with fire and steel. When the battle was over, the stranger revealed himself. He was the emperor of mankind, and Vulcan was his lost son, his primarch. The people wept, for they knew Vulcan was not theirs alone. He was meant for a destiny far greater. With the emperor, Vulcan left Nocturne, carrying with him the fire of his world and the love of his people. From Vulcan's gene seed, the 18th Legion of Space Marines was born. They were giants, clad in black and green, their eyes like embers, their weapons like forges of death. Vulcan named them the Salamanders, in honor of the beasts of his homeworld and the fire that tempered them. But Vulcan tempered them with more than war. He taught them the sanctity of humanity, that they were not lords over mortals, but guardians. Wherever the Salamanders marched in the Great Crusade, they were remembered not only for their fury in battle, but for the way they shielded innocents. While other legions would move on after conquest, the Salamanders stayed behind to rebuild cities, to forge tools for farmers, to repair what had been broken. To them, war was not glory, but duty. With Vulcan at their head, the Salamanders blazed across the stars. Worlds that had fallen to Xenos or anarchy were reclaimed. In one campaign, Vulcan personally carried children from burning buildings even as his legions slaughtered the alien foe outside. In another, He spent nights at the forge crafting weapons, not for himself, but for his warriors, ensuring that none would go into battle with less than the finest arms. The other Primarchs respected him, though some mocked his compassion as weakness. Vulcan did not care, he said. Strength without humanity is nothing but savagery. We are the Emperor's hands, to build as much as to destroy. But even as the great crusade burned bright, shadows stirred. The bonds between brothers frayed, whispers of rebellion spread like smoke. Vulcan, ever loyal, ever compassionate, could not see that the fire of betrayal was already kindling. The great crusade surged outward from Terra like a tidal wave of steel and faith, bringing the Emperor's light to the lost colonies of mankind. At the head of this expansion were his sons, the Primarchs, each a demigod, each leading a legion of transhuman warriors. Among them marched Vulcan, Lord of the Burned, not only with wrath, but with compassion. He 18 legion existed before Vulcan wed from his gene seed, but they were shadows of what they would become. They were strong, yes, but leaderless, scattered in their ways. They fought as mercenaries of the Imperium's will, their identity unshaped. Many commanders considered them too slow, too methodical for lightning war. But when Vulcan was united with them, something changed. His presence was like a forge fire, tempering raw metal into steel. He did not simply command them, he taught them. He made them kneel at the forge, hammer steel beside him, understand the weight of their weapons and the lives they were meant to protect. Thus the Legion was reborn, not merely warriors, but artisans and guardians. They called themselves the Salamanders, after the great beasts of fire from Nocturne, whose scales endured the flame, yet whose hearts were fierce. Unlike other Primarchs who demanded endless war drills, Vulcan placed a hammer in the hands of every son. A warrior who cannot build, cannot understand the value of what he destroys, he said. So the Salamanders became smiths and masons, masters of flame and steel. Each brother crafted his own war gear, from the smallest knife to the mightiest thunderhammer. Their armories glittered not only with weapons, but with works of art. The bond between warrior and weapon was sacred. When a salamander fought, it was with something born of his own hands, quenched in his own sweat, tempered in his own fire. This craftsmanship carried into their warfare. Their flamers and melta-weapons became renowned, their armor black as obsidian and marked with scales of green. Each carried the image of the drake, the symbol of their Primarch and their home. The Salamanders were unlike their brothers in one crucial way. They did not abandon humanity. Where the World Eaters tore through cities with no regard for civilians, where the Iron Warriors calculated coldly in sieges, the Salamanders lingered. After battle, they rebuilt. They forged new tools for farmers, repaired aqueducts, taught smithing to mortals. On one world, Vulcan halted the campaign until his warriors had constructed shelters for the displaced before resuming their conquest. This earned the Emperor's approval, though it drew criticism from other Primarchs. "You waste time with weaklings," Angron snarled, to which Vulcan replied, his voice like thunder over flame. "It is not weakness to protect. It is strength greater than any you wield." In the Crusade, the Salamanders fought in countless wars. The Deltic Expanse, where Xenos warships ravaged human colonies. The Salamanders descended, their fleets burning the alien skyborne nests. Vulcan himself led the boarding action, wielding a warhammer that cracked hulls like eggshells. The purging of Caradosh, where techno-barbarians enslaved humans. The Salamanders stormed the fortresses, freeing captives and turning the enemy's own forges against them. The Makar Wars, where endless orc hordes rose. The Salamanders fought shoulder to shoulder with the Ultramarines. Guilliman, though different in philosophy, admired Vulcan's tenacity and ordered songs of honor for the Sons of Fire. Everywhere they went, legends followed. Mortals told stories of giants who carried children from burning cities, of warriors who fought like volcanoes unleashed, yet knelt beside the weak to shield them. Among the Primarchs, Vulcan's presence was respected, but sometimes underestimated. Guilliman admired his pragmatism and fairness. Ferrus Manus shared his love of the forge. The two worked side by side, hammering wonders beyond imagination. Horus, then the War Master, respected Vulcan's loyalty, but Kurz, the Night Haunter, despised him. Where Vulcan was light, Kurz was shadow. Where Vulcan protected, Kurz terrorized. Their philosophies clashed like flame and void, and a dark destiny was brewing between them. Fire destroys, but fire also warms. Fire forges, fire protects. Be as the flame, my son's wrath for the Emperor's foes, light for his people. This creed became the soul of the Salamanders. It was whispered before every battle, etched into their armor, sung in the forges of Nocturne. Yet, even as the Salamanders thrived, the Great Crusade grew darker. Whispers spread of brother turning against brother, of a storm rising at the heart of the Imperium. Vulcan remained loyal, blind to betrayal, his heart too noble to imagine such treachery. But fate was cruel, for soon the fire he had kindled to protect humanity would be tested, crucible of treachery and war. The Salamanders had been forged in compassion, but now they would be broken in fire. The galaxy groaned beneath the weight of betrayal. The War Master, Horus Lupercal, once the brightest son of the Emperor, had turned against him. The heresy spread like wildfire, legions clashing, brothers slaying brothers. The Emperor called upon the Loyalists to strike back, to crush the traitors before their rebellion consumed the Imperium. It was upon the ash world of Istvan V that the crucible was set. There the Salamanders would meet their fate. 7 legions were called to purge the traitors entrenched on Istvan V. Iron Hands under Ferrus Manus, Raven Guard under Corvus, Salamanders under Vulcan. They were the first wave, the hammer meant to shatter Horus' corrupted sons. Behind them, 4 more legions gathered to strike as the second wave and crush the remnants. Vulcan rallied his sons with fire in his heart. We are the shield of the weak. We are the wrath of the just. Today we burn away corruption itself. The Salamanders descended upon the blackened plains, their green-scaled armor gleaming against the ash. At first, the assault went as planned. Loyalist fire tore through traitor lines. Salamanders advanced with relentless fury, flame and melta cutting swaths through the foe. Vulcan himself strode like a living furnace, his hammer Dawnbringer shattering enemy champions in single blows. The traitors reeled. The Emperor's light burned bright. Then the signal came. The second wave descended from orbit, the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords, the Word Bearers, the Alpha Legion, reinforcements for the loyal cause. The Salamanders roared in triumph. At last, the traitors would be crushed between hammer and anvil. Vulcan raised Dawnbringer high, calling to his sons to press forward. But then the guns turned. The second wave opened fire, not on the traitors, but on the loyalists. The plains of Istvan became a charnel pit. Loyalist lines were caught in a storm of fire, their backs exposed. Iron Warriors' artillery tore into salamander formations. Night Lords fell upon them with chain swords, howling. Word-bearers intoned dark hymns as they butchered. Alpha Legionnaires struck from within, blades in the dark. The Salamanders, caught between two foes, were torn apart. Vulcan fought like a god of fire made flesh. He cut down traitors by the dozens, his hammer cracking ceramite like eggshells, his armor dripping with the blood of fallen foes. Around him, his sons fought to the last, holding ranks even as they were slaughtered. But the weight of betrayal was too great. The Salamanders, already fewer in number than many legions, were devastated. Entire companies were wiped out. Heroes of 100 campaigns fell nameless in the ash. Ferrus Manus, Vulcan's brother, was struck down by the traitor Fulgrim. Corvus Corax barely escaped with his life. Vulcan was not so fortunate. The traitor Primarch Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter, took Vulcan alive. He saw in his brother a chance to prove his own twisted philosophy. Where Vulcan was compassion, Kurz was cruelty. Where Vulcan was light, Kurz was shadow. The Night Haunter bound Vulcan in chains, dragged him to his fortress, and subjected him to torment beyond imagining. He burned him, tore him, broke him. But Vulcan did not scream. He endured. For Vulcan was a perpetual, cursed or blessed with immortality. No matter how many times Kurz killed him, Vulcan returned, and every time he rose, it was with the same fire in his eyes, the same refusal to break. Back on Istvan, the Salamanders were shattered. From tens of thousands, only a fraction survived. Their legion was broken, their strength gutted. But even in ruin, they lived true to their creed. Salamanders formed last stands to cover retreating Raven Guard. They carried wounded mortals out of firestorms, even as traitor blades fell upon them. They fought not for glory, but for each other. Legends say one company held a ridge for 3 days against endless waves of traitors. Their bodies piled high, but their line unbroken until the last warrior fell. Their sacrifice bought time for a handful of loyalists to escape. In the dungeons of Kurz, Vulcan suffered endlessly. He was crucified upon spikes, drowned in magma, torn apart by demonic beasts. Each time he died, he returned. Each time, Kurz tried to break his spirit with new horrors. But Vulcan only looked into his brother's eyes and said, "I pity you, Kurz, for all your cruelty. You are the weakest of us. You fear the light you cannot kill." Kurz screamed in rage, for no matter what he did, he could not extinguish Vulcan's flame. The Dropsite Massacre would be remembered as one of the darkest days in the history of the Imperium. 3 loyal legions broken, 1 Primarch slain, another shattered, a third captured. For the Salamanders, it was a near-death wound. Never again would their numbers be as great as other chapters. Never again would their giant lines swell into countless companies. From Istvan onward, they were the legion that endured in shadows, fewer but fiercer, tempered by tragedy. Though Istvan was their ruin, it was also their crucible. The Salamanders' compassion was not broken. Their fire, though diminished, burned hotter for their losses. The Horus heresy ended in ruin and fire. Terra had been besieged, the Emperor mortally wounded, and the galaxy plunged into darkness. For the Salamanders, the tragedy of Istvan V had nearly erased them. From tens of thousands, barely a few thousand survived. Yet, even from ashes, fire can be reborn. Ned to Nocturne, their homeworld scarred by grief. Their Primarch Vulcan was gone, vanished into legend after his torment at the hands of Conrad Kurz, their Legion W. Then let the forge burn brighter, brother of fire. Now we dive deeper into the soul of the Salamanders, their heroes, and the paradox of their wrath and compassion. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where the galaxy knows only war, the Salamanders are an enigma. They are angels of death, yes, but also angels of mercy. They are fire, a force that burns and destroys, yet also warms and protects. To understand them, one must know the duality of their creed, wrath and mercy. In battle, the Salamanders are relentless. Their war doctrine is built upon close-range annihilation, melta-weapons, thunderhammers. They do not strike with precision like the Raven Guard, nor wage attrition like the Imperial fists. Instead, they bring overwhelming firepower and raw destruction, advancing steadily through storms of fire. To face the Salamanders is to face the furnace of a dying star. Enemy ranks melt before their tanks dissolve under their meltablasts. Fortresses collapse beneath thunderhammers. Their advance is slow, methodical, inevitable, like magma flowing from a volcano, unstoppable until all is consumed. Enemies whisper that there is no terror like the Salamander's fire, for when they burn utterly. And yet, in the same moment, the Salamanders show compassion, almost unthinkable among the Adeptus, where the Night Lords revel in fear. The Iron Hands see humans as weak, and the Black Templars dismiss civilians as distractions. The Salamanders kneel beside mortals. After a war is won, they linger. They help rebuild shelters. They forge plows and tools as readily as they carry wounded civilians from ruins, treating them as sacred lives rather than burdens. In one famous campaign, the Salamanders delayed a victory assault by 2 days so they could evacuate a city's population through a hidden tunnel system. Though some Imperial commanders raged at their inefficiency, the Salamanders stood unmoved. For them, duty to humanity came before all. The Emperor made us not to rule men, but to protect them, their forge fathers remind them. This creed comes from their home, Nocturne. Its people are hardy, living in harmony with fire and death. They forge their own tools, defend themselves against monstrous predators, and endure volcanic seasons of unimaginable violence. The Salamanders see themselves as extensions of this people, not rulers above them. They recruit directly from the clans, and even as transhuman giants, they return to Nocturne as protectors. They walk openly among the villagers, share food, work the forges beside them. For the Salamanders, humanity is not other, it is family. This bond sets them apart from almost every other chapter. To the Salamanders, there is no line between themselves and mankind. There is only fire and those they shield within it. Over millennia, the Salamanders have given rise to legends among the Imperium. a giant even among giants. Tushan is remembered for his unwavering defense of Armageddon against the orc Wog of Gezgul Thraka, where others would abandon civilians. Tushan threw his warriors into the thickest of battles to hold evacuation lines. His hammer struck like a volcano's heart, and his compassion saved millions. Scar, the Fireborn, known as the Drakeslayer. Scar once slew a great salamander beast barehanded during the trial of fire, a feat said to rival Vulcan himself. For Gefather, Vulcan Histan, perhaps the most famous salamander of the modern era, he took upon himself the eternal quest to recover the 9 artifacts of Vulcan. Wandering the galaxy, he appears at the darkest hours of war, bearing relics of fire that turn despair into victory. Too many salamanders, Histan is proof their fathers will still guides them. Too many in the Imperium, compassion is weakness. High lords and generals call mortals expendable assets. The Astra feeds billions into the grinder of war without hesitation. Even among the Space Marines, civilians are often ignored, abandoned, or sacrificed. But the Salamanders resist this callousness. Their compassion is not naive. They know humanity cannot survive without protection. To shield one village may seem small, but to those saved, it is everything. And in the endless night of the galaxy, such sparks of hope keep the fire of mankind alive. This makes the Salamanders beloved among Imperial citizens. To see their scaled green armor is to know safety, if only for a time. Where other Astartes inspire awe and fear, the Salamanders inspire trust. Mercy, however, carries a price. By choosing to protect civilians, the Salamanders often suffer greater losses than other chapters. They linger where others move on, bleeding slowly in wars of defense. They are always too few, always stretched thin. Yet they would not choose otherwise. Their creed demands it. Better that one salamander falls than 100 innocents burn, they say. This is their paradox. Angels of death who value human lives more than their own. To the Salamanders, wrath and mercy are not opposites, but one flame. Wrath burns the foe. Mercy shields the innocent. Both are fire, both necessary. Without wrath, mercy would be powerless. Without mercy, wrath would be meaningless. This duality is their eternal creed, the lesson of Vulcan. It is what makes them different and what makes them enduring. For in a galaxy that knows only war, the Salamanders remind mankind that fire can be warmth as well as ruin. The Salamanders are few, but their legends burn brighter than the suns of 1,000 worlds. From the deeds of their heroes to the wars that shaped the Imperium, they are remembered not just as warriors of fire, but as guardians of mankind. Among the chapter, no name shines more in the modern age than Vulcan Histan, father of the Salamanders, clad in scaled armor and bearing relics of his Primarch. Histan wanders the galaxy upon the quest for the 9 artifacts of Vulcan. Histan, as faith is unshakable. He believes with every fiber of his being that when the artifacts are gathered, Vulcan will return to lead his sons again. His quest has taken him to demon worlds, orc-infested systems, and the heart of chaos, Warzone. On one campaign, he wielded the spear of Vulcan, its sunfire tip, annihilating a demon prince with a single strike. On another, he appeared at the darkest hour of an Imperial fleet, bearing the gauntlet of the Forge. unleashing gouts of fire that broke the back of an orc assault. To the Salamanders, Histan is more than a warrior. He is a pilgrim, proof that hope is not lost, and that the fire of their father yet guides them. Perhaps the most famous Salamander campaign of the modern era was the Third War for Armageddon, when the orc warlord Geskel Thraka launched a massive WAAGH against the hive world of Armageddon. The Salamanders, under Chaptermaster Tushan, fought with unmatched fury. They did not abandon the hive cities, even when overwhelmed. Instead, they threw themselves into the thickest battles, holding the evacuation lines against endless orc assaults. In one battle, Tushan personally shattered a gargant, a walking fortress of orc steel, with his thunderhammer, saving an entire district from annihilation. His warriors formed human walls to shield fleeing civilians, their armor cracked and burning, but their line never breaking. Though other chapters criticized their losses for the sake of mortals, the people of Armageddon sang the Salamanders' name in reverence. To them, the Salamanders were not only angels of death, but angels of salvation. Nocturne itself gave rise to countless stories of Salamander heroes. For every recruit, the trial of fire forged more than warriors. It forged legends. One tale speaks of Brother Agaton, who crossed the volcanic deserts, armed only with a half-forged blade. He slew 3 drakes and carried the body of a fallen clansman across 100 miles of ash before reaching the forge. He became a captain, remembered as a shield for his brothers. Another tale tells of Piriel, a librarian whose psychic flames burned so fiercely that even demons quailed. Yet he was known as gentle to children, often seen in the villages of Nocturne, teaching them to craft small trinkets before being called away to war. These legends bound the chapter to its people, for every salamander was not only a warrior, but a son of Nocturne. Yet even in glory, shadows haunted them. The salamanders never forgot the torment of Vulcan at the hands of Conrad Kurz, the night haunter. Some whispered that Vulcan's disappearance was linked to that torment, that he had vanished into the warp, still scarred by Kurz's cruelty. Others believed Kurz's death at the hands of an assassin was, in part, Vulcan's doing, that in some hidden duel Vulcan had broken his brother before fate took its course. The salamanders hold to one truth: their father never yielded, and so they too never yield. Over the millennia, the quest for the artifacts of Vulcan became more than a mission. It became a pilgrimage for the chapter. Every Forgefather who takes up the mantle follows the path of Histan, seeking relics across the stars. Some artifacts are recovered in glorious battles. The obsidian chariot wrested from the hands of a Chaos Lord who wielded it in mockery. The Tome of Fire, discovered on a demon world, its pages glowing with Vulcan's wisdom. Others remain lost, whispered to lie in the most dangerous reaches of the galaxy. Every quest is dangerous, and many Forge Fathers never return. But to the Salamanders, the journey itself is sacred. Through all wars, one theme remains: the Salamanders fight for the people. They are few, they are often overlooked by the High Lords of Terra. Yet their legacy burns brighter than many chapters 10 times their size. When a salamander fights, he fights not for glory or titles, but for the faces of the innocent he once swore to shield. Every weapon they forge carries not only steel, but memory the reminder that their strength is not their own, but a gift to be spent in service. From Istvan to Armageddon, from the forge to the battlefield, the Salamanders remain bound to Vulcan's words. Be fire. Fire destroys, but fire also protects. Fire forges. Fire endures. And so they endure, few in number, but vast in heart, overlooked by history, yet immortal in legend. Guardians of man, wrath of the emperor, children of the flame, the Salamanders live on, and with every hammer strike, every torch lit, they wait for the day when Vulcan will return, hammer in hand, to lead them once more. The Salamanders are warriors, smiths, and guardians, but above all, they are believers. They believe in their primarch, Vulcan, with a devotion that goes beyond loyalty. They believe he is not gone, only waiting. They believe he will return when mankind needs him most. And so their chapter is shaped not only by war, but by prophecy. The Salamanders teach that Vulcan was not slain after the Horus heresy. They say he vanished, walking into the firestorms of the galaxy, leaving behind only his 9 sacred artifacts. The prophecy is simple. When the 9 artifacts are gathered, Vulcan shall return, and the fire of the Salamanders will blaze brighter than ever. To the Salamanders, this is no metaphor. It is a literal truth. They believe their primarch is eternal, bound by his nature as a perpetual, and that one day he will rise from the shadows of history to guide them again. Each of Vulcan's artifacts is more than a weapon. It is a symbol of his creed, a piece of his soul scattered across the stars. Dawnbringer, Warhammer, strength to protect. The Dracon scale cloak, endurance against flame and ruin. The spear of Vulcan, purity of wrath, fire made holy. The gauntlet of the forge, the power to shape and destroy. The tome of fire, the wisdom of the forge, guidance for his sons. Others shrouded in secrecy, still waiting to be found. Every artifact recovered is a beacon of hope. Each is treated as holy, carried into battle with reverence, as though Vulcan himself stands beside them. This belief in Vulcan's return shapes everything the Salamanders do. Their forges are more than workshops, they are temples. Every weapon hammered, every suit of armor quenched in fire, is treated as an act of worship. To craft is to honor Vulcan. To fight is to embody him. To protect humanity is to live his creed. This devotion makes the Salamanders one of the most spiritually unified chapters in the Imperium. Where others squabble or doubt, the Salamanders are certain. Their father lives. Their father will return. Among the Salamanders, a prophecy is whispered, the day of fire. It is said that in the darkest hour of the Imperium, when chaos engulfs mankind and the stars themselves seem to burn, Vulcan will awaken. He will rise from flame, dawn hammer in hand, clad in the drake's scale, to lead his sons once more. Some believe this day is tied to the recovery of the 9 artifacts. Others say it will come whether or not the relics are found, that they are tests of faith, not requirements of destiny. Whatever the truth, the Salamanders wait with patience. They are the sons of fire, and fire endures. To outsiders, this faith may seem foolish. Other chapters mock it as superstition. The High Lords of Terra dismiss it as primitive myth. But for the Salamanders, belief is strength. When a Salamander falls in battle, his brothers whisper, "You shall stand again when Father returns." When worlds fall to despair, the Salamanders speak of their Primarch, reminding mortals that heroes still walk among them. The myth becomes a weapon, a shield against hopelessness. And in a galaxy drowning in endless war, such hope is rarer than any relic. This faith also sets the Salamanders apart from their brothers. Many chapters revere their Primarchs, but few believe they will return in the flesh. The Ultramarines honor Guilliman, who has risen again. Yet even they treat him as a living legend, rather than a god reborn. The Salamanders, by contrast, cling fiercely to the hope of Vulcan's physical return. It makes them stubborn, resilient, unyielding in spirit. Even in the bleakest battles, they fight as though their father's eyes are upon them. This conviction has turned the tide of wars. Armies that might have fled stood firm, inspired by Salamanders, who declared, "Our Father returns. Until then, we endure." But prophecy is a double-edged flame. Some whisper that Vulcan's return is not guaranteed, that the artifacts will never all be found, or that the Primarch's disappearance was his final sacrifice, never to be undone. Some Salamanders fear that clinging too tightly to the prophecy blinds them to the harsh truth of the galaxy. Yet still they believe. For to lose faith would be to lose the fire itself, whether myth or truth. The prophecy of Vulcan gives the Salamanders something unique among the Adeptus. Astartes, humanity. They are not machines of war. Like the Iron Hands, they are not zealots. Like the Black Templars, they are not shadows. Like the Raven Guard, they are fire. They burn, they endure, they protect. And whether or not Vulcan returns, his sons already embody him every time they lift a hammer, every time they shield a child, every time they fall in fire for the sake of another. In this way, perhaps Vulcan never left. The galaxy of the 41st millennium is a crucible of endless war. To live in these times is to know only battle, to suffer without reprieve. The Imperium itself teeters on the edge of ruin, fractured by the great rift, beset by Xenos and demons alike. And yet, in the heart of the storm, the Salamanders endure. The Salamanders have never been many. Since the Dropsite massacre of Istvan V, their numbers have been fewer than most chapters. Their gene seed slow to replenish. Even in the modern age, they rarely field more than a handful of companies at full strength. But what they lack in numbers, they make up for in determination. Every Salamander is worth 100 men. Every brother knows that his sacrifice will save countless lives. And so they fight on, though each war bleeds them thinner. Better one Salamander fall than 1,000 innocents burn. The Salamander's fury is often turned upon the great alien threats of the Imperium. Orcs, from the plains of Armageddon, the Salamanders have fought endless wars against the Green Tide. Tushin's hammer shattered orc, and companies of Salamanders have been known to burn entire wogs to ash with coordinated flamer strikes. Tyranids, in the age of Hive Fleet Leviathan, Salamanders strike like firestorms against the swarms. Their flame weapons are devastating against chitin and flesh. Their steady discipline holding the line even when outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Eldar and Dark Eldar, though rare. The Salamanders have clashed with the Eldar when Imperial worlds were threatened. Unlike other chapters, they fight without hatred, but with grim necessity. Their wrath reserved for those who prey on mankind. Yet it is not only Xenos that feel the Salamander's wrath. The servants of chaos, too, have been burned in their fire. During the siege of Hesidae Prime, a Black Legion warband unleashed demons upon a hive city. The Salamanders descended, their flamers burning through heretic and demon alike. It was said the city burned for 3 days, but when the fires died, the people lived, saved by the very flames that might have destroyed them. Another campaign tells of Captain Adrax Agad, who held the gates of Kyrene IV against the Night Lords, though slain in battle. His sacrifice allowed the evacuation of thousands, his name etched into the hearts of those he saved. To this day, his story is told in the villages of Nocturne by firelight, a reminder of what it means to be Salamander. When Roboute Guilliman returned and launched the Indomitus Crusade, the Salamanders answered the call. Though wary of Guilliman's reforms and the arrival of the Primaris Space Marines, they accepted their new brothers and forged them in the fires of Nocturne. Unlike some chapters, the Salamanders did not reject the Primaris. They welcomed them, teaching them the creed of fire, showing them the bond with humanity that defines their chapter. Many Primaris found solace in this acceptance, and in time they came to embody the same compassion and wrath as their forebears. Under Guilliman's banner, the Salamanders fought across the shattered Imperium, their flames lighting the way in the darkness of the Great Rift. One of their most recent legends came from the Dacian Reach, where a splinter fleet of Tyranids threatened to devour an entire sector. The Salamanders, though outnumbered, fought a series of brutal delaying actions. At the final stand on Vedra's world, only 2 companies of Salamanders remained against the swarm. They fought with fire until their weapons ran dry, then with blades, then with their fists. Civilians were evacuated in the last moments as the Salamanders were swallowed by the tide. When reinforcements arrived weeks later, they found the ruins still smoldering and in the ashes. A single Salamander banner stood unbroken. Everywhere the Salamanders fight, they leave more than ruins. They leave memory after the battles are forgotten. This is the Salamander's true immortality, not endless victories, but the lives they save. But for all their compassion, the Salamanders suffer. Every war costs them dearly. They are stretched thin, always too few for the tasks demanded of them. Their enemies multiply while their numbers remain limited, and yet they endure. They cannot abandon mankind, no matter the cost. For they are Vulcan's sons, and they embody his creed. To be human is to be weak. To be Salamander is to be strong for humanity. Sector after sector, chaos stirs in the heart of the Imperium, and still the Salamanders march. They will never stop. They will never yield. They will burn and burn and burn until Vulcan himself returns, or until the last ember of mankind fades into the void. For such is the fate of fire: to consume, to protect, to endure. The Salamanders are that fire, and as long as they live, humanity shall not be left in the cold.